Washington is like a room with an enormous circular window. You are looking all over. Anything and everything that happens is noticed. Almost every single occurrence in the world has a repercussion in Washington. As a foreign correspondent, you're really the eyes of your foreign readers. If you can forewarn your readers to things that are important because they are the prelude of a similar phenomenon in their respective countries, then you're doing a good service. Good morning, operator. I have a press priority collect call to Rome, Italy, and the number there is 65041. Collect to the switchboard from Mr. De Medici, M-E-D-I-C-I. I don't think there is a country in the world where there is so much access to information as in the United States, because it is a matter of conduct in the government to try and respond to legitimate press queries as much as possible. Guarda, all'interno c'è una conferenza alle 3 ora di Washington, che sono le 8 ora tue, c'è una conferenza stampa di Kissinger, naturalmente politica, come imposta. Beh, va bene, queste sono le voci che circolano. In Washington something is happening all the time. Technology, art, individual achievement, politics. All of these things attract my attention because in one way or the other, they have a relationship with Italy and with the Italian readers.
His name is Marino De Medici, and he is one of over 1,100 foreign correspondents working in the United States. For 16 years, he has covered Washington and the United States for Il Tempo of Rome. He has interviewed and written about some of the most important people and events of our time.
The Vice President will have a brief opening statement. I would ask that the subject matter of this press conference be limited to the trip, and it will run approximately a half an hour.
I've just completed a meeting with the President which lasted about an hour and a half, in which I briefed him on the various...
On this particular morning in February, Marino De Medici attends a news conference held by Vice President Mondale.
I believe the trip is a success. We've set in motion a process of intensified consultations which will enable our nations to deal with greater effectiveness and to deal successfully with matters bearing on the security and well-being of each of our peoples, the health of our economies, and our common goal to increase the prospects for a more stable international environment.
Mr. Vice President?
President.
Right.
Both the Germans and, I believe, the French.
In this room are correspondents from most of the world's leading newspapers, television, and radio networks.
We can prohibit the transfer of this technology, which greatly complicates the problem of control.
Mr. Vice President, what impression did you bring back from Italy, not only on the economic situation there, but on the short-range perspective of European communism?
They ask questions, record the answers as they seek to understand and report the impact of words and events on their readers.
Framework, and we thought it important to continue that.
Did the President indicate he might visit Japan this year after the Fukuda visit here?
We didn't talk about that.
Did you find much resistance to the idea of a summit in the United States?
That was one of the suggestions. In practically every
For this single foreign correspondent, as for many others in his profession, the American presidential election posed a journalistic challenge to cover the diverse events of American life and government, as well as the national election campaign. Such a period provides the best look at the life of a foreign journalist whose assignment is Washington.
Many people tend to think of us as Washington correspondents, but in reality, we are US correspondents. During the campaign, I traveled a great deal between Washington and various parts of the country, following the political candidates, because you must be out there if anything happens.
How does this compare to the whistle stops you did before, Pete?
Well, you know, in the old days, the whistle stops were a novelty. You had people lined up, especially in '48 when Truman made his stop.
There was no television.
Even during the later years, Lyndon Johnson went south as a train which was called the Corn Pone Special.
I know many top-notch correspondents. We have worked on many stories together, so we know each other very well. Some of us are conservatives, some are liberal, some are in the middle, but we have deep respect for each other and each other's ideas.
And, I don't know, all presidential candidates seem to have to take one.
You exchange a lot of material and a lot of ideas and judgments with other correspondents. It allows you to qualify your judgment by comparing information with someone else who knows a little bit more about a particular subject.
It just happened. Huh?
We represent no votes.
No, that's
They're
right.
just not interested in answering.
No, but the foreign policy...
The exchange of views is very useful. You are getting a feeling of the country and where it's going. And this adds something to your insight, to your judgment, to the way that eventually you will be reporting the story.
What he was doing, at least I have to believe.
The next president of the United States, Jimmy Carter.
The time of Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, John Kennedy, and Lyndon Johnson.
When you go out with the president or even the challenger of the opposing party, you are really trying to verify what impact the man has upon real people, not on the printed press, not the way he looks on television. His attitude, his face is quite different from the behavior that you're used to when you're questioning in a press conference. Something else is visible that is not ordinarily associated with the man, because you see what the man is like in different circumstances, perhaps under stress. And then you see what the reaction of real people is to the leaders and to the possible leaders of the country.
You're running for president of Room 104. How many people, how many students in Room 104? 32. Are you a Democrat or a Republican? Well, you gotta make up your mind, don't you? Well, why are you here?
Anybody who can write a story about American society without touching reality, without talking to people, without getting a personal feel for it, I think runs the risk of writing something which is not true, runs the risk of being out of touch. You have to be involved. I came to the United States at a time which was of historic significance. That is the Kennedy administration. I was sent to Washington originally as a correspondent of a news agency, the Italian Press Association. Many foreign correspondents actually started as news agency men. It was very useful for us because from news agency work we learn discipline and speed, two very essential qualities in a foreign correspondent. You have to cover conferences, write and act very fast under great pressure against a deadline. So you're under the gun most of the time. When I go to the office, I may want to write an article about the Catholics in America, or even I may want to do a controversial piece on the problem of abortion. Now, these are think pieces, which require research, and they take a great deal of time. They are difficult subjects that you have to investigate with a great deal of deliberation. But then something somewhere happens, whether an economic development or a sudden crisis concerning a country, its relationship to the United States. I choose the ones which are important in terms of my country. It's the unexpected that breaks all the time, that keeps us working. I talk to Rome every day to find out how much space they can devote to American news, and also to get a sense of what their interests are.
Paolo, ciao, buongiorno, come stai? Senti,
by talking to my colleagues in Rome, I get an idea of which stories strike them as significant in Italian terms.
Per vedere se regge. Poi oltretutto ce n'è un altro ancora, che questo vorrei fosse pubblicato prima.
I have to know what goes on in Italy, because I'm reporting for Italians. So I have to keep in mind their interests, their expectations, their feelings.
Insieme a quello di presentazione delle elezioni, cioè una retrospettiva delle ultime elezioni del dopoguerra, chiaro? Quindi cercare di pubblicare questo prima magari per domenica. Sì, questo lo mando domani.
You're important to many people that you don't know personally. You're in between a world of happenings and a world of listeners. You are a filter for these people. You're like a prism. You rotate and the light is refracted, and these people get an image of it and they rely on you. You can be very good as a correspondent, but if you don't find a way to communicate trends and habits to your people in terms that they'll understand, then you're wasting your time.
Antonio, how are you?
If the president or the secretary of state is holding a press conference in California or somewhere else and I cannot attend, then I go to the Foreign Press Center and they broadcast the speech or the press conference, so I don't have to be there when it happens. And this is open for all of us. It's very useful.
When the foreign policy will be made at the White House.
I have pointed out before that the negotiation about Rhodesia is an extremely complicated one. It involves four nationalist...
In the Foreign Correspondence Center, I find myself in the company, say, of journalists from TASS, the Russian news agency, or a French news agency, the major Japanese press service, or a Japanese TV network, or a major Israeli newspaper. Foreign policy today goes straight into the homes of people. They are affected by foreign policy. Inflation can be due to foreign developments. The lot of a farmer back in the Middle West is determined to a large extent by sales of American grains overseas. The job of a shoe factory employee may be terminated by competition from foreign countries. Now, that's a story which touches me, because a lot of these shoes imported in the US are Italian-made.
The conference is assembled for the purpose of negotiation.
The presidential campaign was like a marathon race. You had to keep up with the group, and the group took you everywhere. By air, by train, even by boat. When I was covering the election story, I went down the Mississippi in a riverboat with President Ford. Perhaps the biggest freedom we have as foreign correspondents is freedom of movement. We can go anywhere we want. I've even been in the underground headquarters of the Strategic Air Command in Omaha, Nebraska, with President Johnson. You get a strong feeling of the country by meeting people in different states.
I see. In other words, they would be fired if it became a federal operation.
On this campaign trip, I saw posters protesting against a bill in Congress which would have eliminated private inspections of grains from the U.S. to foreign countries. Had the bill passed, these people would have lost their jobs. So they had an interest in getting a compromise on a bill, which would have maintained a certain measure of private inspections and preserved the jobs at a transshipment point in Louisiana.
How are you? It's nice to see you. Nice to have you on board. How are you? It's nice to see you. Hi. How are you? It's nice to see you. Hi.
Mr. President, now what do you think of the reception of the Italian-American community?
Really
You had a good reception yesterday?
excellent. In the market, it was superb.
It was so difficult.
So nice. Thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Mr. President.
How are you?
The life of a foreign correspondent is almost a 24-hour job. Every day you have a lot of things happening that are worthwhile. A political story, an economic story, even a serious story with a funny side to it. There are state visits, cultural happenings, exhibitions. You are absorbing information. You're getting vibrations on how people think.
The museum opened just 2 years ago in October '74.
Was Mr. Hirschhorn from Eastern Europe?
Yes, he was from Latvia.
And how did he make his fortune?
Well, he came over here.
Once you get the idea to do a story about a certain facet of American life, you go out learning as much as you can about the subject. And once you find the story, you still have to develop it.
He dealt a lot in stocks and bonds. Started collecting before certainly before the Second World War, but in 1951,
if I enjoy doing something, if I enjoy writing something, I know that my reader will enjoy reading it.
And it proved to be the richest uranium strike in the world.
Uranium, what about that? Isn't that an irony, the uranium which gave power to the atomic era?
Exactly, yeah. It gives also power to the modern collector. And of course this...
The U.S. State Department is a very important source for any foreign correspondent.
I had a couple of questions in my mind on international economy, and I wanted to get your feeling on them. First of all, do you see that perhaps there will be some tightening of credits to European countries, sort of...
You have to go out to get background assessments, to make personal judgments. Government people in this town are not afraid of talking freely, as long as they trust the newspapermen.
The government, the treasury, and so on. What feeling do you get about it?
I think that we will favor applications by those countries of Europe, including Italy.
I think it is important to maintain regular contacts with your sources. Your source will be responsive even if you touch base only on those occasions when you need the source. But if you develop a personal relationship by which you keep in touch from time to time, when the time comes that you need a quick response, you will be better off.
To judge in terms of inflation, where would you say that the best chances lie for reducing the rate of inflation, in England or in Italy?
Well, there's structural problems, it seems to me, in both countries. They're different.
As a journalist, you have an obligation not to become stale. You can't sit and relax, even if your experience tells you a great deal about how a certain story is developing. You have to try to cover stories which are breaking out there, and there are plenty of interesting stories to cover. For instance, take the space program. Something new is always happening. So you try to keep in touch with developments, with the advance of technology.
How many generations of technology are in this room?
in effect, just one generation, starting with the early 1940s. And of course, we start with the German anti-aircraft missiles and the rockets that we used in
So the
space.
the U-2, that's the one that
V2,
Professor
yes.
Brown...
You have to relate to your readers on the basis of things that they can understand. You have to tell them what's happening, why it's happening, and what may happen to them because of that event.
We use this Minuteman III to show the technology that ballistic missiles gave us in propulsion and in guidance to be able to put these other satellites and space vehicles into space.
I hope that next time you'll take some press representatives up to the...
Well, are you volunteering?
Yeah, I'd love to go.
Good.
No problem.
All of us have covered these space launchings, the conquest of the moon, but there are other stories about space. For instance, we have a story about Italians who are very actively engaged in space exploration. At the Goddard Space Flight Center near Washington, I like to talk to Italian space experts who are working on a joint satellite program. This is an interesting story for Italy and my readers. It's much more important to be in touch with people than to sit in the office. The only way to cover a story is to go out there, where the story is happening, and cover the people who are involved.
Del S-Cube, che sono due programmi realizzati qui dalla NASA, i cui satelliti sono stati lanciati dalla base del
The campaign was gathering momentum. The candidates were very, very close, and I rejoined the Carter campaign.
It's a great pleasure to be back in Newark, in New Jersey, because we had a trend.
The relationship of trust, the good working relationship between the press and the government is, I think, fundamental. If you establish a good working relationship with a government leader, say, or a congressional leader, or a congressional staff member, if you get to know them well and they get to know you well, you can talk about almost anything.
At the beginning, during the primaries, and the people have got a feel for it.
The Italian Americans are a very important ethnic group in the United States. Naturally, I have a special attachment to the Italian American members of Congress, and I have a very keen friendship with Congressman Peter Rodino of New Jersey. On the strength of similar relationships, I have an excellent line of communication to the Congress.
If you help me in November, we get our country moving once again.
And I see you've been working hard on the Italian-American vote.
Yes, I am. Just fine. I enjoyed greatly the Italo-American banquet the other night.
Do you mean it when you say that it will be a strong fight with the president?
Oh, yes, I think so. Sure.
Is it going to be very close?
I think so.
Very close.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it'd be wise to take anything for granted. It's going to be a hard fight. But I look forward to it.
The mid-European ethnic groups are as important on this trip as they are various.
We file our stories from the campaign trail to the cities where our papers are published. Rome, London, New Delhi, Tokyo, Moscow, and hundreds of other cities which are closely watching the American elections. We file our stories describing and interpreting the events, and we follow basically two rules. The first is be sure to get a story to your paper on time. And the second one is get a good story to your paper.
A prendere il treno mondale, a prendere il treno, virgola, fino a Chicago, virgola, mentre Carter tornerà a spostarsi ad una velocità di 800 km all'ora anziché 90, punto.
Social life in Washington is very important because it allows you to develop friendships with people with whom you have a professional relationship. Do you see similarities between 32 and this year? Acquaintances become friendships, and contacts become good contacts. You have to expose yourself to several layers of opinion, specialized opinion. And the best way to do it is either at lunch or at dinner or even at cocktail parties.
To what extent do you think that the temptation of voting against the trend really counts at the last moment in an election, of really voting for the underdog, for the fellow who appears to lose?
Or those who want to be with the winner.
I don't think it matters.
There's a trend that's probably more...
Politics is part of everything that goes on in Washington. This city talks, lives, and breathes politics. From the moment it wakes up to the moment it goes to bed. Then sometime it goes to bed very late.
A prediction. Some people in California still have not voted.
The campaign and election are over, but in Washington, in the United States, plenty of things are always happening. For us, it's instant history. But then, it is history.